it's really interesting to hear that sometimes the white people and black people got along, and sometimes they didn't.
That's right.
And
Certain ones.
yeah.
Certain ones. It's according to who they were. There was a lot of white people that didn't like black people.
Mm-hmm.
They called them out their name and everything and didn't allow them at their house. And we weren't allowed to live on Main Street there in Millersburg, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There was only white people allowed to live on Main Street. But after a while, after a few years, I think it must have been after segregation, black people moved on Main Street. Lived all up and down Main Street. Things really changed.
So, did you ever spend any time on Main Street while there was still segregation?
Yes.
What?
I
How did
stayed with Miss Elizabeth Reynolds, school teacher my mother worked for, and I worked for her too as a child. Cleaning up house and washing dishes and, small things like a child would do. Dusting. And so I stayed on Main Street because she fixed me a room upstairs, and she stayed upstairs, stayed upstairs in one bedroom, and I was in the next bedroom because she didn't want to be by herself. Her son had gone to the service, so she wanted me to stay with her, so I stayed with her on Main Street. And I would go up on Main Street and eat with the little rich children that were up there because their parents would call and ask Miss Elizabeth, could I come up and eat dinner with them? So I'd go up and eat dinner with them.
So, as a little black girl, and this is like the 1930s, you were allowed to go into white people's houses and eat and
Yes.
play just like you were just a regular
Yes.
kid?
Yes, because I was well known. That's why. And that my mama and daddy was well known. And it was a little small town.
Small
So that
town.
that made the difference if it's been a big city like this. Oh no, that wouldn't have happened.
And did and nobody got offended that they
No.
were doing this?
No,
Okay.
no, because everyone knew me.
Okay.
Yeah. Small town, everyone knows you, especially if you're black.
Well, okay. You said how many black people were in Millersburg at that time?
That was a little town of 500 people.
That's small.
That's where I'm from, a little town of 500 people.
And how many black people out of that 500?
There was more white people than was black people. There was about 15 families of black people, maybe, but there was more families of white, I'll say about 50 or 55.
How did our family end up in this little white town?
I have no idea.
Huh. Well, okay. Well, who was your mother's parents? Who were her parents?
Mandy Clay and Jess Henry Clay.
Amanda Clay and Jess Henry Clay. And where
Yeah.
were they from?
Originally from Maysville, Kentucky. That's where most of the Indians left from. They scattered all over, but most of the people came to Carlisle, Kentucky, Cynthiana, Kentucky, Millersburg, Kentucky, and Paris, Kentucky.
So
Because it was a small town.
who was Indian?
Well, Indian was my grandfather was Indian, and my grandmother was part Indian, and my mother, she was part Indian. Well, just like our family now, we have a biracial family.
So Jess Henry Clay, you're saying that he was Indian?
Yeah, he had to be. My mother told me he was Indian,
And where did
and he was a chief. He was Indian chief.
Okay.
Yeah, he died at an early age. Mama said.
So where was he originally from? Was he from?
I have no idea. She never told me that. Oh, that's right. I forgot. Virginia.
Virginia. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
He was originally from Virginia.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about his people, where he came from?
I have no idea because by me being the 21st child, mama having 21 children, and me being the baby, I didn't know too much. The older children's the ones that would know, but me being the baby, I wouldn't know.
So I found Jess Henry Clay and Amanda and your great grandmother Phoebe on the 1870 census in Nicholas County. So I did a little research and I found out that sure enough, um, uh, Amanda Clay and her mother Phoebe had originally been slaves in Virginia, and they were freed. Um, and then they were bought. They were bought. They somebody they the owner died, and a black man bought them, and then he freed them. And I found out that Jess Henry Clay. Have you ever heard?
Yes.
Anybody else named Jess Henry Clay?
No.
So
my uncle.
Your uncle.
That was my uncle.
Your uncle.
And I had an uncle named Tom Clay.
Tom Clay. Mm-hmm. So the history of Jess Henry Clay was his father was Senator Henry Clay, who originally came from Virginia and moved to Kentucky. And because I found the manumission papers, the freedom papers of Amanda and Phoebe in there. And so when I did a DNA test, you'd always said that we're Native American, we were Indian. Yeah. My DNA linked me to Senator Henry Clay. And that was Jess Henry Clay's father. And on the 1870 census, they listed him as mulatto, which stands for mixed race. So I don't know if he had any Native American blood in him. He could have, but his father was Senator Henry Clay. So that's who was he's called the Great Compromiser, and he was also a Speaker of the House under President John Quincy Adams, and he ran for president about 3 times. So that is your great-grandfather.
My mother always told me I was part Indian.
I think in a lot of times people in the black community, they when they see people who are obviously don't look completely black, the first thing they do is say Indian when you take the DNA test, and it turns out that they're actually part white. So interesting fact in history there. So what do you think about race relations today in our country? Why do you think that in this small town you had, during segregation, you had people who were willing to become family and fight for one another and fight to be family, but our country the race relations have gotten worse and worse over the years? What do you think how did that town defy institutionalized racism when it wanted to? It kept it sometimes, but then sometimes it defied
think what started it is when the black people were working for the white people. And if the white people liked you real well, then they would be talking to the other white people about you. And then there was a lot of the black people that worked for the white people. And they became close like family. So I think that's why white and black, the families that had money and then was more up to date than we were, I think that's what started it all there. But it was a long time because we weren't allowed to go to school together, the children and I. My sister-in-law went to one school, a white school, and I went to a country school. Mm-hmm. All black school. Okay. But finally, they built a school in Paris, Kentucky, and then that's when they mixed the children together, the white and black.
Did they have any problems?
No, not in the beginning. But I think later on they had a few problems. But I think they kind of sort of got together and, they didn't fight too much. Of course, I guess when you start mixing and you're not used to it, I imagine things do happen just like they're happening now all over the world
Hmm.
because we're having it here the same as it was then.
Mm.
Only it is much better than it was then.
Okay.
Hmm.
Hmm. So tell me about the little town of Georgetown. You told me some funny stories about that. Tell us
Oh
about
my
Georgetown.
goodness. When we weren't allowed to mix in Paris, Kentucky or Millersburg, Kentucky, my sister-in-law and I would run off and go to Georgetown. And my husband and I would take her because, she had nowhere to go and we had to sneak her there because, it wasn't, people didn't mix at that time. So we'd go to Georgetown, Kentucky, and we'd have a good time. People from Sussex, Ohio, like mixed couples, they would come to Georgetown because lots of times they didn't want to see couples mix. So they would come to Georgetown, Kentucky, and all of us would be sitting around the table just drinking and having a good time. And they'd be there until about 11:30 or 12 o'clock. Then we'd head home. They'd go towards Cincinnati. We'd come on back towards Kentucky. We, and we would let Sylvia out above her house because at that time, they didn't want us to mix.
Hmm.
So I'd leave her out, let her out maybe up the road from where we lived. And
So
then we come on home.
Paris, Kentucky was kind of like the big city.
It is now.
Okay.
They have run it out, they tell me, towards Lexington, Kentucky, built it out towards Lexington, Kentucky.
Was it considered a bigger town, more urban town when you were a kid too?
No,
It
it
was,
wasn't that big.
but it was more. Was it more city than country?
Yeah, it was more city than country because that's where I we had to go from Millersburg, Kentucky, up to Paris, Kentucky on the train to buy my clothes because we only had two stores in my little town, and there was a shoe store and a clothing store. But we had grocery stores and drugstores,
Did you have to sit on the back?
post office.
Being black, did you have to sit on the back of the train?
No,
How, really?
no, we didn't sit on the back of the train. We sat sort of the first seat we come to that was empty. We just sat down. They
Nobody's.
never said anything to us at all. By it being a little small town, I think they knew us. Kind of knew us.
So, do you think that they weren't afraid to defy the segregation laws?
They didn't act like it. They didn't act like it at all. I did have one lady, one white lady, that when I sit down, Mama sat down by a lady, and I sat down by a white lady, and she got up and moved.
Hmm.
Yeah,
About what year do you think this was?
I was about 12 or 13 years old.
So that
So
would
count
be
back from that.
that was been about 1939. So in 1939, you're riding on a train
Mm-hmm. Going to
in
Paris, Kentucky.
Kentucky, and as a black person, you're sitting next to white people. You're sitting anywhere you want to.
That's right.
Somebody moved, one person moved, but
One
nobody.
person moved, nobody else moved.
The train conductor didn't say anything.
No, he didn't.
And you guys did this all the time.
Yeah, because they came right by our house, and I used to wait them. So evidently, they must have known me. And because lots of times my mom would be standing out, they knew us. So they didn't say anything.
Did
to
other
us.
black people ride the train?
A lot of people had cars.
Okay.
A lot of people in Kentucky had cars,
Hmm.
but we didn't have any.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So,
So we had to pay somebody to take us somewhere.
were there times when um, segregation got really enforced down there?
I never ran into that. I don't know whether anyone else did or not. But I never ran into anything like that because I said I was well known through Miss Elizabeth Reynolds because I was up on the main street mostly. I wasn't down in, we lived 3 blocks from Miss Elizabeth Reynolds, but it was down, we called it down in the hollow.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And she lived up on the main street.
What about the other black people? Did they feel like they had that freedom to walk around and mingle with everybody?
Yes, except up on the main street. You know. But there wasn't too many of the people that mixed. They complained because my sister-in-law and I mixed.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like it too well at all. They complained about it. But most of the other black girls that were there, they ran with their own color. I was about the only one because the black kids didn't treat me right. And they didn't like Sylvia, my sister-in-law, because, um, because she ran with me. And so I had my ups and downs. I had a little boy on Main Street when I was up there by where I used to go eat with the white children. I had a little boy who used to call me Chocolate Drops, which that was almost like the word,
Mm-hmm.
the nigger. And I used to run him up in his yard because I didn't like that. I'd be collecting money for the church.
Mm.
I helped the Baptist church out when I was a little kid. And they'd give me an envelope and stamp it. And I'd go all up on the main street. And I would come up with more money than my nephew. And he said, I'm going to spend some of the money. I said, you better not because it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the church.
Yeah.
But I get more money than him because they knew me. They
So,
didn't know him.
so what would you tell people today that are, what would you tell the country today about how to deal with the racism and the struggles we're having? What would you say as your person who's lived through the 1930s till, I mean, you're 92 years old.
I would tell the people of today, stop fighting. Start praying. Start loving people and treating people right. If you don't, you're going to always go through this the rest of your life. I said, I was raised to love everyone. I made a promise to my father when I was 12 years old. He said to me, Pete, love everybody, regardless of race, color, or creed. I don't care if they're black, white, green, or purple. God made them the same as He made us and loved them. So I've done that all my life, and I don't change now.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me, and I want to get you and Aunt Sylvia together on virtually, and you guys talk together and tell some of your stories. But I thank you so much, and I thank you for what you've taught me. I have my own multiracial family now, and it's very interesting, and I've always just seen people as people. But I also do know that racism is real, and that there are some people who all they see is color.
That's right.
And I think our family is unique. I don't think we're blind to the fact that racism is real and it can kill you. But I think also too we come from a family that we also know that love is real and love can overcome racism too.
Yes, it can.
Well, thank you for talking to me today, Grandma.
You're welcome, sweetheart. And it's a blessing to have my granddaughter with me here tonight. Because this is the one I raised. This is my baby. And I'll love her till the day I die.
Mm-hmm. Well, that won't be soon. I hope. Mwah. Oh, we can't.
I can. I've got to hug you.
No. We can't. Coronavirus. We gotta be good.
I don't want to be good. I want to hug my grandma.
I know. We gotta be